I'm Anderson, Mr. Anderson, and today we're going to be talking about the Cold War, specifically espionage during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. It's called the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Bay of Pigs invasion. We'll last check out what it was like to live during Cold War America. You'll find that our world is shaped still today by events and culture that lived in fear of being destroyed by a nuclear attack in this climactic war between America and the USSR. All this and more. And now we get to our third topic. That's right, nuclear annihilation. Maybe you've seen Fall Out Boy before. Let's say you're that American student in 1960. You're probably worried about all of civilization coming to an end as you know it through some horrific nuclear attack that's carried out by both America and the USSR that eventually leads to the whole planet becoming one sterile rock of radioactivity floating in space with no humans on it alive anymore. This was a real fear. In 1950, in 1960, and 1970, and American school children were trained by Bert the Turtle and other documentaries to duck and cover. In case your city is bombed, it's best to get under a desk.
He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered.
First, you'll have to know what happens when an atomic bomb explodes. You will know when it comes. We hope it never comes, but we must get ready. It looks something like this. There is a bright flash, brighter than the sun, brighter than anything you've ever seen. If you were not ready and did not know what to do, it could hurt you in different ways. It could knock you down hard or throw you against a tree or a wall. It is such a big explosion, it can smash in buildings and knock signboards over and break windows all over town. But if you duck and cover like Bert, you will be much safer. You know how bad sunburn can feel. The atomic bomb flash could burn you worse than a terrible sunburn, especially where you're not covered. Now, you and I don't have shells to crawl into like Bert the Turtle, so we have to cover up in our own way. First, you duck, and then you cover. And very tightly, you cover the back of your neck and your face. Duck and cover underneath a table or desk or anything else close by.
I guess it's better than nothing. At least it makes you feel like you're safer, having some kind of plan. Kind of like wearing cloth masks when an epidemic is all around. Huh? What? No. Anyway, moving on. This fear of nuclear attack was so prevalent. I can't say enough how much a part of American way of life this became. And it wasn't just us. Around the world, people were really fascinated and horrified and afraid of what this new age, this atomic age, this prospect of nuclear war could bring in. And sure, if the Cold War were fought with unicorns, it'd look something like this. But it wasn't. It was fought more with proxy wars, a space race, and with the threat of nuclear weapons. And so it looked more like classrooms trained to react in the case of an atomic bomb being dropped near your city, and bomb shelters built in your basement or somewhere in your community, or movies that portrayed what happened when the world was destroyed in an apocalyptic vision of the future when humanity was all but wiped out. I mean, we all love dystopian movies. We see them now all the time in Hunger Games and Divergent, The Giver, and the Maze Runner series. But dystopias and dark futures really got their big start in the Cold War. Movies like Dr. Strangelove or On the Beach, about the likely impending doom of a world gone mad that destroys itself in a nuclear war. Or movies like The Thing That Came from Another World, The Day of the TRIFFIDS, or The Day the Earth Stood Still, are all about alien life that arrives on our planet with a threat of wiping out all life as we know it. The Cold War fears of a nuclear holocaust also kick-started the current craze of zombie movies, such as films like The Last Man on Earth or Night of the Living Dead, in which it was envisioned a world in which humanity was all but lost and quickly turning into flesh-eating undead. And many other apocalyptic movies. The Time Machine, based on the H.G. Wells book, and Planet of the Apes were both set in the far future when visitors come to a foreign landscape where humans have become hunted slaves for their animal masters. I mean, that's a rough summation. I don't want to give away any spoilers. And speaking of films with twist endings, movies like Soylent Green featured a dystopian Earth with humans having to devise desperate means to feed its starving populace. And the list goes on. The Andromeda Strain, where humanity could well be wiped out by a virus that comes from space. The Mad Max movie series, in which the world is an Australian wasteland after a nuclear war. So much so it makes New York rush hour look tame in comparison. You get the idea. There were movies, ranging from them to Godzilla, about what happens, what kind of new monsters could develop now that they were exposed to this new unleashed nuclear power that brought kaiju up from the ocean's depths or transformed basic insects into man-eating creatures. And not just scary movies. In 1962, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby started to make superheroes come to life on the page, all of them built inside of this framework of a new nuclear threat. How did Bruce Banner get his Incredible Hulk powers? Oh, from a nuclear bomb going off, and the gamma radiation entered into his body, turning him into a green Goliath. Never mind the fact that none of that actually works out with science. Or what about a new group of teenagers taught by a bald-headed telepath who take up their home inside of a mansion, all with crazy new powers called mutants, being able to turn into ice or shoot concussive beams out of your eyes. Oh, and what were they called, these X-Men? Children of the Atom. Splitting the atom, atomic age. I mean, this was everywhere. And you can hear it in songs too. People fixated on this fear, not knowing what was going to come next. Couldn't we all just avoid war, specifically nuclear war? That was the question. Bob Dylan, Peter, Paul and Mary, the Beatles, all of them sang songs in the hope that we could avoid this kind of mutually assured destruction. I mean, that is the phrase we use to describe if you have nuclear weapons and I have nuclear weapons and we both send them against each other, we're both going to be destroyed, but we're going to mutually assure each other's destruction. In fact, at one point, by the 1970s, America and the Soviet Union had so many nuclear weapons that you could literally kill off all life on planet Earth twice. I mean, we had a huge stockpile. It's what we call the arms race. Got a little out of hand. So eventually by 1972, President Richard Nixon met with the Soviet premier and agreed in what we call SALT treaties to scale back the number of nuclear weapons we were keeping inside of nuclear submarines and nuclear warhead silos, and we did get rid of most of our weapons. So you've listened to me share about espionage, about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and about the fears of nuclear war. And now that you've heard all of that, you get a chance to complete the questions that are there for you in Google Classroom. And now,